live webinar. So we've got Dr. Michael Hall with us here, junior doctor from the Lister Hospital in Stevenage. This is part 2. We recorded part 1 about a couple of hours ago now, and we had so many fantastic questions that came in from the participants watching that we thought we couldn't possibly do them justice by cutting it short at an hour. So what we've done is Michael and I are just back now to go through some of those questions that we weren't able to answer or ask as fully as we'd have wanted to. So we're going to do that now. So welcome back, Michael. Let's go straight into the subject of students when they're at school and they're thinking about medicine or thinking about whether they want to apply. So go straight in there. Is having 4 A-levels actually helpful, or would it be better to have 3 with higher grades?
So it's a good question. For most universities, there is no real difference between 3 and 4. Your schools will say differently, and some of your schools say, oh, it'd be better if you had 4. But if you think about it this way, there are certain schools in the UK that don't let you do 4 A-levels. They force everyone to do 3 A-levels. And so if we preference people with 4 A-levels, then it would be unfair for those who weren't allowed to do 4. What I can say is that you would kick yourself if you took 4 and got missed your offer than if you took 3 and got your offer. Having said that though, most people who apply to medical school, and if you're applying for Oxbridge Medical School, most people could handle 4 A-levels and could get A's in all 4 of them. That doesn't mean that you have to do it. It just means that that's the kind of approach you should be thinking about. But if you want to spend your time doing other stuff, that's fine. Just take 3 that you know you can do well in. Only take a 4th if you were interested in it and you were going to learn about it anyway.
Okay, thank you. And then clarify which A-level should be taken. Is maths necessary?
So technically no. So you can just do chemistry, biology, physics if you wanted to. For some universities, you can just do chemistry, biology. It's really up to you. I find maths a useful subject in helping me with chemistry and biology and just kind of thinking about the scientific method and how to prove things. I quite like it. Also, I'm Asian and naturally just quite good at maths, so it's one of the things that we can do. But it is only useful if you want it, really.
Okay. We spoke about the importance of sciences, and biology and chemistry were the 2 that you spoke a lot about. What about psychology, and are there any other subjects in the science family that are relevant or perhaps not relevant?
So unfortunately, psychology does not count as a science. The only things that count as a science for most medical schools are chemistry, biology, physics, maths, further maths. And in some medical schools, maths and further maths don't count as 2 separate A-levels. You can only pick one of those 2. So most people pick maths. So unfortunately, even though psychology can be really helpful and really useful in terms of your general knowledge and wider reading, a lot of medical schools don't count it as one of your sciences. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take it. It just means that make sure you still have your chemistry or biology.
Yep. Okay. Now you spoke about your own grades that you got both for GCSEs and A-levels. And question that came out, I'm just going to read this verbatim. Were you a topper? I'm assuming that's someone at the top end of the class at school in your classes. The person who submitted this question say that she is smart but never top in the class, and she feels like there's a stigma that you have to be a topper to get into medical school, especially Cambridge. Myth or fact?
Oh, kind of half and half, kind of pseudo myth, I would say. So if you think it's really hard to judge schools against other schools, because there are some big private schools that everyone will get straight A's, and so to be at the top of that private school is really, really hard. Whereas if you're in a school where the average score is 2 or 3 C's or B's and C's, then getting straight A's would naturally put you at the top. The best way to put it in kind of context is that we normally look at kids who are in the top 2% of the UK. And so in all of the UK, are you in the top 2%, which sounds scary, but actually if you're near the top in your school, that's about the top 2%. I myself was close. I was in some subjects, I was a topper, as it was. I ended up valedictorian of my school, which meant that I just ended so I did end the year with the highest grades. Having said that, though, I didn't get the highest grade in biology, and I don't think I even got the highest grade in chemistry. I think it was me and another girl, and actually we were both neck and neck for a lot of school, and we both applied to Cambridge Medical School and we both got in. And so it could be the case that you might not be at the very, very top, but it could be that all of you are very, very smart and all of you would get in to Oxbridge. It could be the case that you might be at the top of your school and still not be able to get in, because when you're compared to other people at other schools, it's really competitive out there, and there's nothing you can really change about that. All you can do is not worry about what everyone else is doing, just try and get the best out of yourself that you can do, that you can get, and use that as a benchmark. Don't compete with others, just compete with yourself and try your best to get the most out of that way. In terms of Cambridge, yes, most people in Cambridge were the top of their year, and it just becomes really scary when you arrive and everyone else is really clever. That was a bit of a shock to me, and it's really, really stressful, but also a fantastic experience as well, which we might go into in a bit later.
Okay, yep, brilliant. Now, thinking about your experiences of school and what you might expect someone who wants to go to med school to do, what sort of extra activities or hobbies did you do that you thought were relevant to your application for med school, and what could others be doing?
So there are two things that you can do, two groups of things. So there's something which I call extracurricular, and there's something which I call supercurricular. So if you think of your kind of curriculum, there's supercurricular, so it's same as your curriculum but kind of more, and then extracurricular, which is like different to your curriculum. So that's how I would think about it. In terms of supercurricular activities, I think this is really important. So things that are related to your subjects or to your A-levels, but more. So are you the kind of person who, when you learn something in class, do you go home and do you think, oh, that was interesting, maybe I'll read about it in another book, or maybe I'll go on the BBC Health website and see if there's anything about this topic in the news, or maybe I'll just go on Wikipedia and just kind of Google these things and see if there's anything else I can learn about, and go YouTube or go on Twitter and find out if there's any tags in Twitter or things in YouTube that I can learn more about. That is probably one of the most useful things that you can do. There is no one perfect site that you can pick, but being generally inquisitive and interested in your subjects and in your sciences is a really useful thing for university. In terms of extracurricular, these are things like music, sports, leadership, volunteering, charity work. They are important because they show someone who is able to manage their time, have interests, able to relax, someone who can do stuff for stress relief and realize the importance of having that. So when you become a doctor, actually managing stress is a really important thing. For some people, that could be as simple as a cup of tea and reading a book. And that's what they like doing. For other people, it could be competing in a sport to a very high level. It really doesn't matter. I don't care if you are a national level footballer or if you're someone who likes reading books, because as long as you're doing something that you know is useful to you and what makes you feel better. I spent a lot of my time reading up about medicine. I spent time learning how to play instruments. I was in a band. I did some volunteer work in a GP as well. I did a lot of public speaking, debating competitions, because as you guys can see, I like talking. But I also had a lot of time to like go out, hang out with my friends, go to the cinema, go to Nando's. That was like my classic thing to do as a teenager. So yeah, there is still time for all of that as well.
Okay, so that's probably quite a nice segue into the next series of questions that we want to ask, which is around the application process. When you actually know you want to go to med school, you've done your research. What preparation did you do for your UCAT and BMATs, or what preparation should people do in preparation for UCAT and BMAT?
Yeah. Sure. So for people, most of you know about this already, but your UCAT and your BMAT are your application tests or exams to get into medical school. Certain medical schools, most medical schools ask for one of them. Some ask for BMAT, some ask for UCAT. So first thing I would do is just check which medical schools you like and check if they kind of align to which exam and prepare for them. Most people sit both exams, so I sat both. Most people sit both. If you're really tactical and you want to pick only ones that do UCAT, then you just pick all the UCAT universities. But sometimes that's putting all of your eggs in one basket, and then if you don't do well on the UCAT, then you're a bit stuffed. So most people just do both. In terms of preparation, I'll say yes, know how the exam is laid out, and also there are two main pieces of advice that I would give you. Two main things. Well, three. First one, do not pay extortionate amounts of money to go on a course. It is not worth your time. There are loads of places that you see advertised, oh, come join this BMAT course. We'll teach you how to do the BMATs. Just pay us £700. Not worth it. Absolutely not worth it. Waste of your time. I never went on them, and the people who did go on them, all they learned was the same thing I kind of checked myself. Okay, so it's just people trying to make money. They give you loads of information. The UCAT and the BMAT, they give you loads of different past papers. They tell you exactly how the exam works. So this leads me on to my two follow-up pieces of advice. One, make sure you understand the knowledge requirement for the exams. For that, I mean, in BMAT, there's a scientific section in the section 2. It asks for GCSE level sciences, which is somewhat true. The thing is that they can ask you GCSE level science from any exam board. So therefore, did your school do an Excel or AQA or OCR? And so for me, I never learned about the renal system in my GCSE biology, but some schools did. And so make sure that you understand the different bits of GCSE science for that bit of the paper. Know what different bit sections ask for. The second thing that I would say, so first piece of advice, don't pay for any courses. Second piece of advice, know your knowledge requirement. Third and most important piece of advice, practice. Practice, because it is the most time sensitive exam you're going to do. Most of your exams so far in GCSE and maybe in A-levels, you've had a decent amount of time. You've never felt really rushed. UCAT and definitely BMAT are fast. It's a really quick exam and really speedy. And so make sure you're used to answering questions, but make sure you're used to answering questions quickly. You want to make sure you want to answer as many as correctly as possible. But let me tell you this, for the BMAT, from my personal experience, some of the easiest questions were at the end. The last one or two questions were really easy. Some of my friends did not finish the paper, and I thought, oh, you've lost marks, and they just guessed. But I was like, if you managed to get to the end and read those questions, you would have got the right answer. And so make sure you finish the paper and make sure you're working relatively quickly. Learn how to answer questions quickly and correctly, and that is a good skill to kind of practice. Don't sweat the really, really, really hard questions. It sounds weird because you're usually a very clever student in your school. Sometimes you just get a question wrong and you just kind of accept it and be like, okay, I'd rather get more questions right later than worry about this question now.
Yeah.
So those are my 3 top tips.
Okay, well, that's very, very extensive knowledge that you just shared with us around the UCAT and BMAT. A few questions have come in around work experience and the importance of having work experience and how that will add weight to your application when you're going in there. So I suppose let me ask you the questions that have come in. Where should I be looking for work experience? Did you do any volunteering before university? And what kind of work experience would I need to do if I wanted to join a top level university? I assume they were probably talking Oxbridge.
Sure. Okay, so in terms of work experience, think about why you're getting work experience. You don't get work experience just because you're trying to tick a box. Don't do anything to tick a box. They're all useful for some reason. Why do you want to do work experience? Hopefully it is to try and get some kind of insight into what it's like to be a career, be in the career. So be a doctor or just be a carer or be in the health profession. So when people ask what kind of work experience would you need, any kind of work experience that can help you answer that question. Now we know on the kind of admission side, we know how hard it is to get work experience, and especially with the whole pandemic and with the coronavirus, it's really hard to get work experience. We know that. but it's not impossible. It is much better to get good quality work experience than volume of work experience. Now, what I mean by that is, when you did your work experience, did you get what you wanted out of it? Did you learn about what it's like being a doctor? Did you learn what it's like being a nurse? Do you understand how a hospital works? Do you understand the difficulties in healthcare? I would much rather see that than see loads of work experience. I've had people who apply and they've had, oh, I spent 2 months in Uganda with my dad's heart surgery hospital, whatever. And I'm like, okay, great, you've got a dad who's a doctor. What did you learn? And they tell me, oh, I learned how to do heart surgery. It's like, okay, well, what's it? Why is it important to have heart surgery out there? What is the difficulties with the public health concerns of heart surgeries out there compared to here? And they couldn't answer it. And so basically, they just sat for 2 months in an operating theatre, not asking questions, not learning, and you can tell that they just didn't make the most out of the work experience. I'd much rather you did 5 days of work experience, and in those 5 days, you asked loads of questions, learned loads about the career, really got to grips with what it's like being a doctor, or what's it like working in a hospital, and that is much more useful. So what kind of work experience? High quality work experience where you're going to really engage. I've had work experience kids follow me in the hospital, and I can tell a big difference between the ones who are asking questions, trying to get involved, and there are some people who just come on work experience and just stand there, and I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so that's important. In terms of volunteering is also a great thing to do. Again, if it's because you're doing it because you care about public health or you care about what you're volunteering for, don't do it for a tick box. I volunteered as a receptionist for a GP. It was great for me to learn how to talk to all kinds of people every day, get really used to talking to the public every day. If people get annoyed, if people get angry, I just have to be professional and deal with it. And so that was nice. And what else? In terms of also, I mentioned the whole coronavirus thing about work experience. We know that there's a pandemic going on. We will probably understand that it is difficult to get work experience. Just try and do what you can. We like people who problem solve. We like people who try to work their way around a situation. Tell us why it was hard to get the work experience. What did you do to try and fix this? Did you get any kind of experience? Listening to webinars like this, doing online work experience, still trying to get involved with volunteering, all really useful stuff. We aren't robots. We understand what's going on. We just want to see you try and engage.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good answer that you've given there as well. And I think the point that I took from that is that your work experience isn't just learning how to complete advanced heart surgery. It's just as much as that, it's learning how to talk to the members of the public. So sitting on a reception desk, doesn't matter whether the reception desk is in a hospital or even if it's in a medical facility, but the fact that you are taking calls from the public, you're perhaps dealing with people who may be slightly challenging, is a really, really important skill. And it's something that's going to be valued as part of that holistic journey that you go on to become a doctor, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah. Looking back at the questions that we've got there, I mean, thinking about your own steps, you decided you want to go to Cambridge, and you went into some detail on the first part of our webinar why you chose Cambridge. What are your tips for, and it says tips for a Cambridge interview. I mean, I don't know whether you can differentiate between a Cambridge interview and an Oxford interview, or even an Oxbridge and a non-Oxbridge interview, but what are the sort of the niche things that you should think about specifically for Cambridge and then for Oxbridge?
For applications or for interview?
I think for both. I mean, for interview is the question that we've had in there.
Okay, so for interview, for most, nearly all medical schools, you'll require an interview to get in. So whether you like it or not, you're going to have to interview for your place. They are scary. It's, for a lot of people, the first interview that you have ever done, and we understand that you're nervous. It is expected that you'll be nervous. It is quite nerve-wracking, but we are trying to get the best from you. Think of it from our point of view. We would love someone to come in and to blow us away. It would make our job really easy if you came in and you were really good with your answers, really well thought out. So we're not trying to trick you. We're not trying to make you say something wrong or to make a fool out of you. We really do want to get the best out of you. So for me, that was a good kind of mental thing to go in, to be like, they're not trying to be mean, they're just trying to figure out if I'll be a good medical student, if I'll be a good doctor. In terms of what I can ask to help, I would say try and just practice talking academically out loud. Now, sometimes this can be really difficult to gain, but all of you have schools and have teachers. Try and practice talking about a subject academically to an adult. And it sounds really silly, but you get there and you are talking to professors and doctors and very senior researchers. And so actually that can get you quite nervous. And so learning how to use technical terms, learning how to talk about medicine eloquently is something to practice. Some private schools love doing training for interviews and prepping their students to give them almost scripts. I do not recommend that at all. It's much more natural if you just talk normally and try to engage with the question. I would say so. Try and practice talking academically. Secondly, understand sort of all of the different kinds of topics they can ask. So for all different kinds of medical schools, some of them will talk about your work experience, some will talk about your personal statement, some will talk about what's going on in the news, some will talk about ethical dilemmas, some might talk about academic topics and pick the scientific topic to talk through. There's lots of different things, you cannot predict them, but kind of get used to talking through them, learning some key concepts. Okay, if I'm going to get asked an ethical question, what are some key ethical frameworks that I can use to apply to any question? If they're going to ask me about my personal statement, do I know everything in my personal statement? Make sure that you haven't made anything up and be ready to talk about anything in your personal statement. Things like that. Those, oddly enough, trip a lot of people up. I say it every time, and yet every year we get people who come in and I ask them something about their personal statement and they don't know what I'm talking about, and I think I'm trying to help you. For Cambridge specifically, for the interview, they focus a lot on your academic ability. So my advice is get ready to be wrong. You will get asked stuff and you will be wrong, and you'll be asked questions that are really difficult that you're not going to know the answer to, and that's okay. You're not meant to know the answer. What you're meant to do is you're meant to try and work through the problem, try and engage with the issue, with the academic concern at hand, and just try and work through it. Talk out loud, talk about your thinking process, because it's very easy to be presented with a very hard thing, a very hard problem, and just kind of close up. Try not to, try and work through it, try and work with us. That's what we want to see. And so that's probably my best advice for Cambridge specifically, and Oxford as well. Oxford does a very similar thing in their interviews.
Yeah. Again, you'd obviously done a lot of research and you knew that Cambridge was the medical school that was going to suit you the best. How much research did you do, and how important is it to really nail down what does each university, what does each medical school offer, how do they do it, what are the things that you should be, what are the questions you should be asking yourself when you're trying to choose which med school you want to apply to?
I would say that this is probably one of the most important questions that you should think about, is what medical school right for you, and what medical school is right for you. There are loads of resources out there. There's the UCAS website, there's each individual university website, there's now lots of comparison websites, there's like medportal.com, and there's Student Room, though I don't know if Student Room has a lot of it's a bit of an echo chamber for people just talking nonsense to each other, so don't take that too seriously. But there are loads of resources online that can compare different medical schools, what A-level requirements they need, what GCSE requirements, how do they do interview, when do they do the interviews, and so there's so many resources out there. You can't spend too much time researching this. Spend as much time as you need. Do not skip this stage. Really nail it down. And so there are loads of resources there from the website and online. Try not to listen to hearsay. Try not to listen to what people say on the Student Room, what people say on chat rooms, what your mum's friend's dog's owner thinks. Try to work it out for yourself from proper resources.
Okay, all right. And I mean, let's bust the myth as well. You've obviously gone to Cambridge, and Oxbridge, as in any walk of life in higher education, is always going to be that, you know, real top drawer and top caliber. But to be successful in medicine as a doctor, you don't have to go to Oxbridge, do you?
No, not at all, not at all. I would say that if you're going to medical school, you're pretty successful already. Medical school is hard to get into. Different medical schools just make different kinds of doctors, and that's what I would say. There are some medical schools which are much more practical and hands-on. There are some medical schools which are much more theoretical. There are some which are much more research-based. You can be successful in any medical school. Oxbridge just kind of brings out the ones with a much more academic focus in terms of the theory. And in terms of Cambridge, one of the best things I love about Cambridge, and also the thing I hate the most about Cambridge, is that the expectation of you is so high. So high in medical school and in the university. They think that you can do everything. They think you can learn everything. They think that you can do everything. And for me, that's like, oh, I can't tell if they're being serious and they actually expect me to do all of this. They do, and then it's really surprising when you can. And that's what it is. It's a breeding ground of people who are used to being the best. They're not the best anymore, and they work hard to try and stay as good as they are. So it kind of breeds that environment of people trying really hard to do cool things, to work as hard as they can, to try lots of different things. So I've met some amazing people who are terrifying because they were so smart and so good and so talented, but they're some of the best friends that I've made, and they're going to go off and do cool stuff. So I'm not saying that you have to be successful. You can only be successful if you go to Oxbridge. That's not true. It just happens to be that people who naturally work very, very hard tend to also try to apply for Oxbridge and try to live that environment. But I've met amazing doctors from all kinds of medical schools. So.
Yeah, okay, good answer. Sorry, I think we just had a lorry reversing outside my house then, if that was beeping that you heard in the background. And final question on this sort of section, really. Is there a threshold for the amount of 9s you need for Oxbridge? Because Oxford says at least 6 9s.
Right, okay, so for I personally have not seen the requirement for Oxbridge to say 6 9s. So I think it's very difficult to say that there's a threshold for anything. For a lot of universities, and especially for Cambridge, we try to look at everything. There's not one thing that's going to cut you out. We try to make sure that we look at all of the different things. So we try to look at your GCSE scores, your A-level scores, your A-level predicted, your work experience, your personal statement, your reference, your interview scores, your BMAT scores, or your UCAT scores. We try to look at everything and see that, okay, so maybe you didn't do so well on your GCSEs, but you've got really good A-level predictions and you've done really well on your BMAT. Or it's very hard to get someone who's amazing across the board. That is quite rare. It's usually a guide, as in most people who get into Oxford do have usually have 6 9s or kind of high A stars, top A stars kind of grades. So if you're doing IBs or if you're doing Scottish Highers, then most of the people who get in have that kind of grade. So what I would say is that it is sometimes a helpful predictor, but I really don't like using hard rules because there's so many different special scenarios that we all consider.
Yeah, no, okay. We're going to move on now to your actual time at med school. Excuse me.
Can I just? There's one question which I think is a very good question. Do you mind if we just go back to it? Which is someone sent in, when applying to medicine at uni, what do you think makes you stand out from other applicants?
Yeah, no, please, okay? Yeah, no, answer that one. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I saw this question, so whoever sent this in, thanks, this is a great question. So what makes you stand out as an applicant? This is a hard question, but it's what makes an applicant stand out is someone who's had a very thoughtful application, someone who's genuinely really considered what it's like to be a doctor, really shows maturity in their decision to pick this career and has shown evidence for doing that. That is something that we love to see. I would love to see someone who genuinely has shown that they've thought about everything about this career, all the good bits, all the bad bits, all the difficulties, all the things you have to go through, and then has said, you know what, I still want to be a doctor. I still want to study medicine, and here's all of the proof. Here's the work experience I've done. Here's the books that I've read. Here's the volunteering or the A-levels or all of the extracurriculars or supracurricular things that I've done to prove that I have thought about this career, that I understand what it means, and that you would not make a mistake in considering me for a place. I've showed it with my A-level scores, I've shown it with my academic ability, I've shown it with my interview scores, whatever, but I'm proving that I've really genuinely thought about this career and understand it, and I'm applying for it. That, if you can show that, hands down, you'll be one of the strongest candidates. And that's what people really need to get at. Lots of people apply for medicine because they think it will be lots of money, or for the prestige, or because their parents asked them to do it, or their school asked them to do it. Nah, don't worry about that. That's nah, don't like it. Show us that you really wanted to do this and prove to us that you can.
Yeah. And do you think you can see through someone's personal statement if they're doing it for the wrong reasons? Does that really stand out? Can you see that?
Yeah. You can start to see it in their work experience and in their personal statements. You can kind of see it. Sometimes it only really gets to the interview where we can see it. So interviews are a really telling point. Usually what happens is that when you apply through your paper score, so that means that your UCAS application, your GCSE grades, all of that stuff, most of those things are checking if you are bright enough or smart enough to handle the course, because it's a really challenging course. And then when you get to interview, it's then really drilling down, okay, will you be a good doctor? Will you be able to be someone that we want to have as a medical student? We don't always get it right. We're not perfect. Sometimes mistakes happen. Sometimes life happens. And sometimes you could be someone who would be an amazing doctor and the universities that you applied to didn't see it. Sometimes we let in people who maybe shouldn't have been let in, and they'll quit and they'll drop out. That does happen. And I can't say it's perfect, but we do try our best. And that all you can do is try your best to do so and to try and get in.
Brilliant. Right, so moving on to your time at med school, which is the next part of the process. I mean, just tell us, how many years of school have you experienced? Where are you in that journey at the moment?
Oh, sorry, could you say that again? Your internet just cut and has come back again. Say that again.
Sorry, yeah. Where are you in terms of your schooling at med school? Are you completed now, or are you still halfway through the journey?
So I finished medical school. I now feel very old. So I am 27 and I have done all of my secondary school, finished my A-levels. I have done 7 years of medical school because I had to retake one of my years because I ran into some personal problems, some mental health problems, some other issues, which meant that I couldn't quite finish the year, and so I had to do another year. So mainly some health issues that came up. And so it was 7 years long, and I've now graduated, and I've in my second year of practicing as a doctor. So I've done nearly 2 years now of being a doctor.
Okay, good. And well, the question links on to that one. Have you ever needed to retake key exams during med school? And is it common that your peers and students don't pass exams the first time and do have to retake them?
So it does happen. It does happen, and it happens to the best of people. And for some people, if they have to retake all of their exams, then that is maybe a sign that it is too hard for them, or that they've had other issues that have come up in their life. As a medical student in the UK, everyone is guaranteed at least one retake attempt. So no matter who you are or medical school, if you failed an exam, by law, you're allowed to take another attempt at it. If you fail a second one of a key exam, then you have to then put forward an argument about why you have failed a second time, and you may get a third attempt or maybe a fourth attempt. If they think it's reasonable, if you had health concerns, if you've had personal issues that you couldn't avoid, then you're allowed to have other attempts. If they think, oh, actually, you've not really been engaging with the course and this isn't the course for you, they might say this might not be the course for you. So it does happen. I would say in a year, maybe something between 10 to 30% of students have failed an exam at some point in their life. It's scary when it happens because usually these people are people who are not used to that. Some of the best. For me, when I failed one, I had never failed an exam before. I've never done badly in an exam before, and so it was a real shock. And you realize that actually failure happens. Sometimes you miss an exam, sometimes you do badly, sometimes you have a bad day, sometimes you have a bad year. It depends what happens after it. Are you someone who gets knocked down and that's it? Or are you someone who gets back up? And that's what I learned. My professor taught me it happened. You've now experienced what it's like, and you're still alive, and you're still going. The world hasn't ended. So what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
And I think that was a really key life lesson for me. And so it's a really good thing to kind of grow with, that sometimes life won't go your way. It's how do you react, which is important.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The Wi-Fi wasn't great then. I don't know whether it's picked up by everyone then, but I think we got the gist of your answers, and it's having that resilience to overcome the issues and problems that you have there. Next question: what's the workload on this degree course compared to others? And appreciate you haven't got anything you can directly compare this to. And then, how is the workload at Cambridge compared to others? So I'm sure will be a similar answer to ones you've given earlier about the expectations of a student at Cambridge or Oxford.
Yeah, that's all right. So the thing that I have to compare it to is I did an art history degree, so I can compare it to art history. I would say that the workload of a medical course is high. It is. There's no point in me sugarcoating this. I'm going to let you guys know now. Not a surprise. It's hard. It's really hard. It's probably one of the hardest degrees out there. It's probably one of the degrees where you have to learn the most amount of stuff. It's not only conceptually difficult like maths, where you have to know key concept and understand really tough things. It's not like other degree courses where you have to memorize lots of stuff. It's both. You have to be really good at understanding hard things. You also have to be really good at understanding and memorizing lots of things. And you have to be good at both, which is a really hard skill to have. And so, yes, it is very difficult. But if you guys are sitting here listening to this, considering about going into medicine, you probably weren't going to pick the easy route in life anyway. And that's okay. That's good. I didn't want to pick the easy route in life because I wanted to see what I could do. I wanted to see how hard I could push myself. I wanted to see how far I could go. If I wanted to take the easy route, I would have not applied to medicine at all. So it is tough. You are working a lot during the day. You are working several hours. You'll go and do lectures for about 4 to 6 hours. You'll go home, you'll do a few hours of work on top of that every day. But it's not impossible. You have time to socialize, you have time to hang out with friends if you make time. What I did is I realized I just had to organize my time really well. I cut out most of my time on Facebook and most of my time on YouTube. I realized that I'd much rather hang out with friends and get my work done than I would like to scroll through Instagram for 4 hours, which sometimes I still do. I'm still human and it still happens, but you still try and do your best to make sure you're being productive and doing what you want to do in life. So it's absolutely not impossible at all. How does it differ from other universities? Well, it's hard to say because I've not been to other universities. All I can say is that yes, it's very difficult at Cambridge. It's difficult at lots of medical schools. you will be spending a lot of your time working. You will be surrounded by people spending a lot of their time working. I spent hours upon hours revising 10, 12, 14 hours a day for weeks on the run up to my exams. That's just the way it is. But I learned a lot. I did a lot. I achieved a lot in my time at university, and I'm proud of that. So do what works best for you.
Yep, brilliant. A few more questions then on med school. Does it matter what style of teaching at university it is, such as PBL or an integrated degree? You need to explain that to me first of all, but I'm sure that'll mean a lot to a lot of the people watching.
No, that's all right. So there are a few styles of learning, as you mentioned. There is traditional, there is integrated, PBL. Some people do it as a systems-based. It basically means, of all of the topics out there, how do we choose to teach it to you? Traditional, so Oxbridge, UCL, Imperial, will be 2 years of here's the book work, and then 3 years of now go into a hospital and learn how it's used practically. Integrated is where it's all mixed up together. So you learn about it in lectures from day one, and you're in the hospital from day one, and you kind of learn it all at the same time. PBL is problem-based learning, so you make your own learning, as it was. You don't get taught anything, you actually get presented with a problem, and then you go away and try and solve that problem, and in that time to solve that problem, you've learned about it. Systems is kind of a step between traditional and integrated, where you learn about all of cardiology as a system, anatomy, physiology, and pathology and clinical stuff at the same time. It is important because it's important to you. You have to think about how you would like learning about it. I knew that I wanted to learn traditional because I like the theory behind stuff. I am nerdy. I'm a nerdy person. That's okay. If you want to go into medicine, you'll probably be a bit nerdy too. I like the bookwork. I like knowing about research. I like knowing what's the cutting edge out there. Some people don't like that. Some people want to know exactly how it applies to their day-to-day living or day-to-day practice, so therefore would prefer integrated. Some people would want to see what are good at making their own learning and want to go away and study it themselves. There are pros and cons for each. For me, I liked having a syllabus. I liked having a list of this is what we expect you to know, because then I have something to aim towards. I struggle with PBL because you could be researching totally the wrong thing, and then you get there and they're like, oh, actually, that's not what we wanted you to learn. I'm like, oh, okay, you might have missed the mark. There could be different reasons for different people. And so it's important to you if it works for you and what works for you.
Okay. Is intercalation worth it?
So this, again, like a lot of what I say, is up to you. For those of you who don't know what intercalation is, it is where halfway through your degree, you do an extra year to do another degree. In some universities, it's mandatory. So Oxford and Cambridge, it is mandatory for you to do. Everyone has to do it in their 3rd year. Pick another topic and get a degree in it. For some, it's optional. Either you choose to go into it, like Bart's, or you have to reach a certain threshold. You have to be in the top percentage of your year to get into an intercalation. And then for some universities, they just don't have it at all. The pros of doing an intercalation is that it's an extra degree to have in your CV. And when you apply for jobs, it gives you more points. So therefore, you're slightly at a better advantage for it. It also means that you can study something that you enjoy, something that's a little bit different. Something else is that if you realize that medicine is not for you, you get into medical school and you realize, actually, I don't like this degree. If you do an intercalation, all you have to do is stick it out until 3rd year, pick something you like in 3rd year, and then you could technically leave after the end of 3rd year and have a degree. If you choose to leave halfway through a medical degree without an intercalation, you don't get anything. You have nothing to show for it. So actually, it's a good checkpoint. The cons of doing an intercalation is that it's extra money. You have an extra year of tuition fees. It's an extra year of your life. And it's also, you could be stuck doing something you don't want to do and you don't want to learn about. And so that's the issues there. For me, I like learning. I like being at university. I liked being a student. I liked doing art history. So for me, it was the right choice. Depends how it feels for you guys.
Oh, we just lost your signal there,
Is
Michael,
that right,
for a
Gareth?
sec. Yeah, yeah, we heard most of that, and I think we got the gist of it. Yeah, we just lost the signal at the end though. Probably we're getting to 5 o'clock, and there are an increasing number of people coming home and using
Okay.
Wi-Fi in and around you at the moment. So a couple more questions. Let's just talk on about the life of a doctor. So your actual life as a doctor now. So you're out of med school. You're in a hospital. Do you get any free time? Since a reasonably good question.
Um, So yes, I do, shockingly, but this is because I like to try and organize my free time. It is much harder. You will spend your time working night shifts and working the weekend, and it's going to be really annoying if your friends have a birthday party and you have to cover your hospital ward. That does happen. It does have a massive hit to your free time, more so than other jobs do. It doesn't mean it's gone. It just means that you have to be smart about it. And to be honest, there are lots of jobs out there. If you're thinking of a very high ranking professional job, a graduate job, a lot are really busy. And a lot of them, it is tricky to find free time, but you can make it work if you're just organized about it. So I love hanging out with friends. I love meeting up with people and going out for dinner or going out for drinks or going out to the cinema or whatever. And so I make it a priority to use my free time well. And so it does exist. You can have your friends, you can have a family, just hard. And you just have to be willing to work for it. That's all. Nothing is impossible, I would say. There are lots of things that you can do to make your life easier and better when you get there. It's one reaching that I can't think because I do it. So if you say, well, you can't have a life outside of medicine, and I'm just like, oh, no, I can. I'll prove it. And you just, if you have that mentality, then nothing will surprise you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fine. So look, the final question I'm going to ask you, and apologise for this being the last one because it sounds rather a crass one to ask, but what is the salary of surgeons and doctors, and how much of a motivating force is that when you choose this career?
No, okay, it's an important question because it's a question that everyone thinks about, but no one really wants to talk about, and that's okay. First, I'll go through it more kind of conceptually, and then I'll talk about numbers. Was it something that I thought about? Yes, it was something I thought about. It shouldn't be something that motivates you, though. It should be something that you should be aware of. Doctors, in general, are one of the most well-paid professions out there on average. What I mean by that is that there are lots of jobs that get paid more than me. If you're going for money, don't go for medicine. The reason why I thought about it is because it's probably one of the most stable incomes to get. You will always have a job if you want a job. They will always need doctors. The world could be going through the biggest economic crash of the generation ever. Jobs could be lost all over the world. You will still need doctors. Everyone will still need doctors. It's one of the safest careers to go into, and it's one of the safest well-paid careers to go into. It will always provide you with a stable income, and so in that regard, that's what is useful about it. It won't give you the most amount of money, but again, like I've said, and like many people will say, money's not the most important thing. Yeah, it's nice to have. What do you have enough money to for? Would rather spend your time doing something useful and spending time with your family, or just earn more money but have no life. And so I see a lot of my friends who earn way more than me, but working in bank jobs that are taking up all of their time. They have less free time than I do, and they're doing a job that they hate. And so what's the point in earning that amount of money if you're not going to enjoy it? So for
Yeah.
me, yes, it pays well. It's something to think about. It doesn't pay the most. It doesn't need to pay the most. In terms of how much money, I earn, so if you kind of think about general incomes, the average income in the UK is about what, 18,000 a year. The average full-time income is about 24, 25 a year, 25,000. As a junior doctor, when I first start, I'm on about average to under average income. I'm on about maybe 22 to 23 thousand a year, which is not a lot, actually, really not a lot. So if you're starting it, Don't do it for the money. You're not earning a lot of money. You're earning as much as I could earn similar if I was just a very, very good waiter. I could earn some similar amounts. The difference in medicine is that amount goes up quite quickly. So a year on, I'm earning 26, 27, and then you earn about 30, and then you earn about 38, and then about 45, and then about 60, and then about 70. And then most doctors will be earning over, for consultants, top of their, once you've finished your career progression, you could earn as much as 70, 80, maybe 100,000. And so it's very, very high. There are other jobs that could earn that much or more, but it's very risky.
Okay, all right. Sorry, you cut out midway through the answer then, but I mean, just looking at some statistics we've got on our HOP web page at the moment, this indicates that the average salary for a medical practitioner, which I know is a bit of an umbrella term here, is £76,440 a year. That's based on some 2017 data, and that is more than double the average salary of an employee in the UK. So the financial reward is there, but there's a big sacrifice to make before that. And I think, as you've said, Michael, really you need to be doing it for the right reasons to really reap those rewards, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. I'll say that it's nice to be paid comfortably, but the rewards of the job are much greater than your wage or how much you're being paid. And that's what makes it worth it, in my book anyway. And for me, I know that there are many challenges with it, but I'm going to do this job until I don't want to do it anymore, pretty much. And that's okay. I'm ready to say, if it gets too much, if I hate it, if I get stressed out or burnt out, or I get annoyed with it, or if there's too many pressures, if it's not worth it anymore, I could leave it. I would leave it, and I would understand why. But I make that evaluation regularly, every few months, every year. And every year I think, you know what? I still really like this job. I still enjoy going into work. I still feel useful. I'm being paid okay. I like the people I work with. What's not to like?
Well, I think that's a really good note for us to finish on. So, Michael, thank you for giving up more of your time than we'd initially anticipated. We had so many fantastic questions that came in from our attendees today on the live webinar. So this one will be tagged onto the back of that one. So if you're watching this one first and you're not aware of the first one, there is a part 1 on YouTube, which you'll be able to find through our HOP channel. www.hopinto, that's HOP, H-O-P, into I-N-T-O, will get you through to us. And that website will provide you with lots of information about careers information, very specific to Hertfordshire as well. So not just within careers within medicine, within a whole range of different careers. So you're just seeing that on your screen now. What you can see here is part of our careers directory, which is giving you some data about becoming a medical practitioner, which is the umbrella term that we're going to use to cover Michael's position and other related occupations within that industry as well. So thanks ever so much to everybody for listening and for tuning into this one. We really hope it's been very, very useful for you and that you've gained a lot out of it, and hopefully a lot of inspiration for you as well. Thank you again to Michael. I'll leave you to fall back into your routine now that you need to fall back into. You've got a busy week coming up ahead as ever at the hospital. Thanks very much, and I will speak to you again later. Thank you.